Hey guys, welcome back to my series previewing the 2020-21 NBA season. Today is the sixth part of the series, and we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, last season the Cavs finished with a 19-46 record, which was the worst in the East, and it was a up and down season, but mostly down. One positive was Colin Sexton, averaging 20 points per game. But on the negative side, Darius Garland, their first round pick, the fifth overall pick from last year, only averaged 12 points per game and wasn't very efficient. So that wasn't very good for the Cavs. At the deadline last season, they traded for Andre Drummond. I don't really know why, but it only cost them a second round pick. So, okay. All this being bad got them the fifth overall pick. And with that pick, they took Isaac Okoro. And then also this offseason, they lost Tristan Thompson in free agency. And they traded for JaVale McGee, and the Lakers were just salary dumping him, so they got a second to take him on, which is a decent move for them. And that's the type of thing the Cavs should be doing. Like, just taking on salary and then trying to move on from their veterans and seeing if they can get assets for them. So a projected starting lineup for them could be Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, Isaac Okoro, Kevin Love, and Andre Drummond. So with Garland, last season, his first season, his rookie year, disappointing. 12 points a game, only 4 assists for a lead guard. That's pretty poor. And with Colin Sexton only averaging 3 assists per game, that's an issue for them. Another issue with the Garland and Sexton backcourt is the defense. They're both small and not very good defenders, so that's going to be a problem for them moving forwards. And they're okay scorers. So Colin Sexton averaging 20 points per game, that was pretty promising and maybe one of the only bright spots of the Cavs season last season. And in Garland, only 12 points per game, but there's signs that he can be a decent scorer in this league. So, with their fifth overall pick, they took Isaac Okoro. A bit of a surprise, given that he's not very good on offense, but what he is a good, strong, physical defender. And when you have a small backcourt of Garland and Sexton, a player like Okoro, you need that, a really good defender at the small forward position. He can probably pick up the best player 1 through 3, so that's really going to help them out defensively. And if he brings that defensive intensity, he can really help them out. And then they just hope that he develops on offense to become at least a league average player on that end and then be a really good defender. And then they still have Kevin Love. I mean, they really should be looking to move him on, but they don't want to take on too many assets just to get him off the book. So if they can honestly just salary dump him at this point, maybe get a second or something like that. I don't think he has great value given his contract and his age and his injury history. But we'll see. Maybe this year, if Love is trying a bit more to get his value up, the Cavs can win a few more games. But I really don't see that happening. And I just really hope for all parties that they can find a trade for him. And they also have Andre Drummond. I mean, he's an expiring contract. I don't really know what they're going to do with him. He obviously gets a lot of rebounds. He's kind of an empty stats guy. I mean, like, there was a few years ago he was viewed as a really good player, but that really shows the shift in the NBA, that now he's not even a positive asset and you don't really want him on your team. So we'll see what happens with him. I suspect they'll just let his contract run out and then he'll probably leave for another team, or maybe they'll sign him to a much smaller deal. But in the starting lineup, they really need improvements from Darius Garland and just Colin Sexton, maybe becoming a bit more efficient and stepping up defensively. They just really need that because not too optimistic about this Cavs team. And then off the bench, they do have a good young player in Kevin Porter Jr., in his rookie season, averaged 10 points a game. It was like 15 points a game per 36. So hopefully he can keep developing, and then if he keeps developing and plays really well, he might take Garland's spot in the starting lineup. But that's something to be optimistic about for the Cavs, and they'll be really hoping that him and Garland can improve this season. They also have Cedi Osman. Cedi is a player that I really like at the small forward position. 11 points a game last season, 38% from three on 5 attempts a game, so good shooter, can do a bit of everything. I'm a big fan of his, and I'd like to keep seeing him get minutes and playing well. They also have Larry Nance, who I think could be a useful player on a winning team. So maybe if he plays well at the start of the season, they can move him on for maybe a late first or something like that to a team like the Celtics or another team like that needs a bit of a big that can score a bit and rebound a bit and play a bit of defense. And I think a lot of teams could use him. So hopefully the Cavs can find a trade for him, because it's not really useful to them given that they're not really going to win many games. And then JaVale McGee, I mean, they just traded him for him to get a second. He's not expiring. That's a good move. Maybe a team will trade for him. Maybe he just let his contract run out. But in any case, you got a second round pick, and that's what a team like the Cavs and at where they're at in the rebuild, that's what you should be doing. And then backup point guard, they have Dante Exum, Matthew Della Vedova, Damian Dotson. I mean, I don't know how many minutes those guys are going to get, or, what they're going to do with them. Who knows about that? But this team is really going to go as far as Garland and Sexton take them, as well as guys like Okoro, Porter Jr., and Cedi Osman. And then hopefully they can move on from Love and Drummond and get some assets there. So some of the positives, like I said, young team, a player could break out like Garland, Porter Jr., Sexton, or Osman, just something like that. And they need something like that, and then try and move on from their veterans, because they're not really helping them. So that's what's good for the Cavs. As for why they're not a good team, I mean, defensively, you're always going to struggle defensively when you have a small backcourt of Garland and Sexton. And then Love doesn't really try on that end, and Drummond isn't really a great defensive player. But hopefully Okoro can change that and really help them out there. That's really what he's been drafted for, so hopefully he helps them out there. And then playmaking. Garland only 4 assists, Sexton only 3 assists. That doesn't really work. You sort of need one of your guards to be more of a chief playmaker. So hopefully one of them can step up in that regard. And that's a bit one of the reasons I was surprised they took Okoro ahead of a guy like Denny Avdia, who is a big wing who can ball handle and play make a bit. But they thought they needed defense, so now they have to solve the playmaking issue. So as for where I think they can finish, I think they'll be the worst team in the East again. They were last team. I don't really think they're a better team. I don't really think the veterans are going to try. I don't think their young players really have what it takes to mount a playoff push or anything close to that. So 15th in the East, not looking too good for the Cavs, but you never know. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.